taking a look at the latest developments in regards to the Burns-OR Standoff case. The man you're looking at here is Grant County Sheriff Glenn Palmer. Now, he is currently in the crosshairs as the Oregon Department of Public Safety Standards and Training is asking the Department of Justice to open up an investigation of Grant County Sheriff Glenn Palmer. Now, they have received numerous complaints from the public and others, including dispatchers and the John Day Chief of Police. Now, these complaints are alleging misconduct by Palmer and raising alarm concerning Palmer's association with the leaders of the refuge occupation. The Department of Public Safety Standards and Training works in conjunction with the Board on Public Safety Standards and Training. They are responsible for training and certifying Oregon's public safety providers, including law enforcement. Now, this is a copy of their letter that they sent to the Department of Justice requesting this investigation into Sheriff Glenn Palmer. The licensing agency has also warned Palmer that if violations of police standards are found, he could face revocation of his police certification. Now, they would not be able to remove him from being the sheriff, as that is a publicly elected position, but they could remove his certifications and force a new election. Now, according to this one-sided article published by Oregon Live, the mainstream media there in Oregon, Palmer has drawn criticism for his association with the armed militants who took over the wildlife refuge and his meeting with some of the occupation leaders. They quoted the John Day Chief of Police, Richard Gray, in his formal complaint that was filed. "I have great public safety concern when the Grant County Sheriff is allowed to openly meet and be part of this group of lawbreakers." So right there, he's calling them a part of these armed militants that took over this wildlife refuge. And notice all the key words, all the buzzwords being used here to create your perception of this current situation. Now, according to Valerie Luttrell, the emergency communications manager for John Day 911, she's quoted in her complaint saying Glenn Palmer is viewed as a security leak, not only by local law enforcement staff, but by the Oregon State Police and the FBI. Now, it's important to remember why all of this went down in Oregon to begin with. Due to the federal overreach and the land grabbing that's still taking place, that's still going on, the unjust incarceration of the Hammonds. I think no matter who you are and where you stand on this, we can all agree that the Hammonds do not belong in prison for 5 years, federal prison, and that they're not domestic terrorists. They're just normal people, they're ranchers. Now, regardless of how you feel about the whole Oregon standoff situation, we have said from the very beginning that they were going to use this situation to push their agendas, to push their gun control agenda, to demonize the Second Amendment, demonize the Patriot movement, go after the militias, further push their branding of the domestic terrorism catchphrase and buzzwords. And now it appears that they're coming after constitutional sheriffs. Now, the government and the mainstream media would like you to believe that this sheriff is unfit for his position and that they go just short of calling him a domestic terrorist himself. Now, at this point in time, what they're not telling you is that Sheriff Glenn Palmer of Grant County was one of the first sheriffs to stand up against this administration and their unconstitutional gun control laws that they were trying to push so hard after Sandy Hook. Now, he addressed this letter directly to Vice President Joe Biden himself. As you can see, he's been involved in law enforcement for almost 30 years. He was a U.S. military veteran, and he proudly proclaims that he too has taken an oath of office to defend and uphold the Constitution of the state of Oregon as well as the Constitution of the United States, and he takes his duty and responsibility seriously. And the citizens of Grant County have entrusted and empowered him to represent them. Now, he goes on to state he will not tolerate nor will he permit any federal incursion within the exterior boundaries of Grant County, Oregon, where any type of gun control legislation aimed at disarming law-abiding citizens is the goal or objective. We live in a free society, and firearm ownership and right to defend oneself from becoming a victim of a criminal act or from far-reaching government attempting to enact laws are unconstitutional. As Sheriff of Grant County, I too will publicly state I will refuse to participate and stand idly by while people I represent are made into criminals due to your unconstitutional actions. Now, the sheriffs making a stand against this administration's unconstitutional gun control was widely covered by multiple media outlets. But most interestingly enough, most of the coverage of Sheriff Palmer was provided by Oregon Live. But what they're not telling you about is that in 2015, Sheriff Palmer became the subject of national media coverage again in a highly suspicious incident that was never truly solved. Now, in July of 2015, the FBI investigated at least 20 separate letters received by law enforcement agencies across Oregon after Sheriff Palmer was hospitalized following the exposure to an unidentified white powder in an envelope. Palmer was exposed to an unknown chemical substance after opening a letter delivered to his office specifically, and had been hospitalized and treated after developing a rash caused by this unknown substance. Now, according to the FBI, the suspicious letters sent to the government offices throughout Oregon did not appear to contain any hazardous material. Now, this despite the records showing that Sheriff Palmer's hospitalization and treatment due to reaction from exposure to the substance in the envelope. Palmer was one of 3 who actually suffered physical reaction and a rash from the exposure to the substance and required hospitalization. Now, Palmer said he didn't see any powder or white substance when he opened the letter, but he experienced a metallic taste in his mouth and felt a tingling in his arms. He thought, oh boy, I better get out of here, go to the hospital to get his blood tested. But when he got there, they went full hazmat on him, stripped him down, and hosed him down. I'm going to give you 4 reasons right now why this federal government is going after Sheriff Palmer. In 2013, Sheriff Palmer landed on the very wrong side of the Obama administration and its federal muscles, with the unapologetic and a highly public stand against the proposed disproportionate measures against the Second Amendment. Okay, there's 1. Number 2, Sheriff Palmer was one of the prime targets in a mysterious case of envelopes containing a toxic substance mailed to Oregon law enforcement officers, which were handed over to the FBI for forensic investigation and never saw the light of day. Number 3, Sheriff Palmer has been a strict constitutionalist, a proponent of the separation of powers, pro-local authority versus federal intrusions, with a staunch defender of the sanctity of the Second Amendment, none of which is tolerated by the current federal powers, one enough to land him on the Fed's to be persecuted list. Okay, he is a target just for that alone. Number 4, Sheriff Palmer is now a direct target of the federal government's witch hunt, geared to set an example and destroy the last pockets of resistance and righteousness in the nation of the no longer free. And that's number 4 right there. So not only are they going after the patriots, they're going after the militias, the Second Amendment. They're going to go for those who stand for the Second Amendment here. Those who stand for the Constitution. They're going after sheriffs now. Okay, this is a big turn of events here. They're going after anyone and everyone who stands in their way at this point in time. I'm going to be talking more about this later with the author of this article, Sibel Edmonds, as well as Constitutional Sheriff Richard Mack. I'm going to leave a link over here for CSPOA. You guys can learn a whole lot more about this. The CSPOA assembles sheriffs, peace officers, and citizens who understand the grave implications of our eroding constitutional protections. The time is now.